guys, it's Aisling back chatting to you again with some book recommendations. So this month I'm going to talk to you about who I think is one of my new favourite authors. Her name is Daisy Johnson. Now, a few of you might know Daisy as she was one of the shortlisted authors for this year's Man Booker Prize for her book Everything Under, which I'm going to talk about in just one moment, because I discovered Daisy's writing through her first book of short stories, which is called Fen. Now, I actually have to recommend this to anybody who has any sort of interest in short fiction, short stories, or what can be done with that form. This book is amazing. I gave it a 5-star rating on Goodreads. I absolutely flew through it. And usually with shorter fiction, you know, it's harder to grab the reader's attention and kind of keep them on tenterhooks and keep them reading. But this is the most creative collection of short stories I've ever read. My favorite story was the first one. I'm just going to check the name for you here. It's called Starver. So it's about two sisters, and one sister is kind of, you know, she sort of develops maybe an eating disorder, we don't know, and she stops eating and she gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and it's kind of following the two sisters and talking about school and stuff. And then eventually the sister starves herself so much that she turns into a fish and swims away out of her sister's arms. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I just think that is so beautiful and unique and magical. They're kind of like these dark, sort of absorbing fairy tales set on this kind of Fenland, hence the name. And it's just, I've never read anything like it. Dark, murky, wet, kind of strangely delightful tales. I really recommend this. So this was a great opener before I read Daisy's first novel, Everything Under, which, like I said, was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize this year, and I can definitely see why. It's a story about a young woman called Gretel, and it kind of follows her point of view in the present and in the past. So we're going through how she's feeling now. She's estranged from her mother, but she's been looking for her mother for years. And then it's the story from the past is when they both used to live on a boat together. They lived this kind of feral, nomadic life where they were sort of traveling around. They lived on this boat. They lived in kind of a horse's stable for a while. But for one point in time, this teenage runaway called Marcus lived with them as well. And a lot of the book is Gretel trying to sort of remember this story. So we get segments of the book told from Gretel's point of view in the past and the present, and then Marcus as well. Now, the book itself, not to spoil anything, but I think this is widely known, it's a modern sort of retelling of Oedipus, which is absolutely fascinating. But I just want to preface this by saying you don't need to know anything about Oedipus to enjoy this book, because I actually don't even know that much. I know the basic story with the eyes coming out and, you know, what the oracle told Oedipus, but it still is an amazing read, because you're sort of waiting to see how she's going to make this happen. How is she going to reveal, you know, the big kind of climax, the horror to us, and you won't be disappointed, trust me. One thing I really want to praise this book for as well is the depiction of different genders, or gender fluidity, or whatever you want to say. There's two characters in it who they're floating in between different genders, or they've changed their gender, and I think just the way it's handled, I really want to commend Daisy for that. I think it's really beautifully and gently handled, and I loved it. I loved the characters in it, especially the character of Marcus, who originally starts off as Margot, which is very, very interesting. So he kind of runs away and becomes Marcus then, once he's run away from his home, and then all their stories collide, and it's just beautiful, and the language is amazing. I would recommend this for anybody interested in literary fiction, and I don't think it's a difficult read, which I'm gonna use as a compliment. You know, despite all the themes and everything that's going on here, it should be very difficult, and it should be clunky, but it's just not. She pulls it off, Daisy Johnson, in such a way that I feel like it's enjoyable no matter what. And I was definitely, you know, reading until the very end. Another aspect of the book that I really, really enjoyed was this monster called the Bonak, which the mother and Gretel, you know, they kind of convince themselves lives in the river on which they live, because they're living on a boat at the time. It's beautiful, and the theme of language as well is very strong as well, because Gretel, you know, she rewrites, updates dictionaries, so there's a lot of focus on words, and words that her and her mother made up. You know, they basically spoke their own language to each other, you know, and it's just two people living at such close quarters. That's kind of what happens, and kind of how language can betray you, and you know, when you find out the true meaning of words, or that certain words don't exist. It's brilliant. And then the character of the mother is handled beautifully as well. You know, she does find her mother early enough on, you're told this in the book, so it's not a spoiler. She does find her, and she's very much changed. You know, she's older. She's not the kind of ballsy, strong, you know, physically strong woman that she used to be when Gretel was a child. And her deterioration is very, very sad to read, but very, very real. So I loved the way that was handled as well. So I'm going to recommend this for anybody who wants some fiction that's a bit dark, but not dreary, still beautiful, still bright and effervescent and flowing, just like the river that it's set on. So guys, I hope you enjoyed those two recommendations. That's Fen and Everything Under by Daisy Johnson. I'll talk to you guys soon with another recommendation. Bye.